The signing of Mike Clevinger is a bit confusing to me. I appreciate the fact that the White Sox have added pitching, but at what cost? To help me make sense of Clevinger, I'm being joined by Locked On Padres host Javier Reyes. Welcome to Locked On White Sox.
What is going on, my man? I'm very excited for this episode.
Yeah.
And just ready to talk Clevenger, a guy who, man, a tumultuous time, I think some Padres fans would say, in San Diego. And I'm surprised that, this is how baseball offseason works. It's the only sport where the lower tier free agents always go first. But it's still kind of surprising, how quickly the White Sox, in what feels like a pretty big offseason for them in a lot of ways, that this was kind of like their first big move. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way too. I wonder what the market was like for Clevinger. Was it just white hot, and they're like, we got to get in on Clevinger now because boy, he's going to get gobbled up. The GM for the White Sox, just some backstory. Rick Hahn said about a month and a half ago, the Sox are not going to be throwing money at problems. And here they go. They take this gamble, in my mind, on Clevinger. Okay, it's low risk, could be high reward, has had a ton of injury issues. And they give him a $12 million a 1 year deal. What were your first reactions when you heard that Clevinger was going to the White Sox?
Look, I think that, so there's two things. Number one is that I have been kind of out on Mike Clevinger for a while, especially listeners of my podcast know, for a bunch of reasons that we'll get into. And number two is just, it's funny, just I can't get over how much things have flipped for the White Sox, who were kind of like the it team, kind of the it team of the American League, the way the Padres were the it team after 2020. Both teams ended up taking a step back. The Padres bounced back in 2022, not so much the White Sox. But it's just, this is a team that's just, it feels like they're just trying to go for these low-cost options. And my other thing is maybe this is a guy that they're hoping to have a really good first half and then flip him at the deadline. I don't know. But it's, in fairness, you could do worse. It's 1 year. It doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? In the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter that much when it's just a 1 year deal. And you kind of look at it and you say, look, he's been good for a while, absent these past 2 years. He has evidence of being very good. And when it comes to ironing out the back end of a rotation, there are many, many worse guys probably out there to take a flyer on than Clevinger. Although I was still surprised that it happened so quickly. It's almost like they were like, oh, no. And it's weird because it's not like we've seen baseball. It's not like teams are, excited to spend money. You know what I mean? It's not like this is a sport that is known for, oh, you got to get in on the free. No, there's if a player costs more than $10 million, half the teams in the league are just out. It could be for one season they seem right out. So that's what was surprising to me the most, probably.
Yeah, especially the way the Sox have operated. They don't make moves in November. They're active during the winter meetings, and it sounds like the trade market is going to be how they are going to try to improve on all the other needs. It just was interesting that this was their first big get. Mike Clevinger. So, Sox fans are going to want to know positives and negatives. We saw him a lot when he was in a Cleveland uniform, and those were some of his glory days. I mean, he had some really great numbers, had a bunch of different injuries, came over to you in 2020. And again, you didn't see much of him because he was out all of 2021 with his second Tommy John surgery. Mm-hmm. But I guess if you could give us just some positives from Clevinger, and then maybe what are some, lingering or maybe lingering in 2023 negatives.
I think the negatives for Mike Clevinger are plenty, right? We're definitely going to talk about those and just kind of, just this is a guy who injuries just absolutely destroy players sometimes, and I think this is one of those cases. And the Padres tend to be very aggressive, right? In 2020 they were very good, albeit in a truncated season, and they decided, all right, this is probably the best pitcher on the market. And then Cleveland, they had so much pitching that they were willing to deal him. My kind of vibe with Mike Clevinger is also that while I do think he kind of stinks now, it's hard to fault the Padres for that trade. I know everybody likes to get on them and, Cal Quantrill. Cal Quantrill's fine. I would like him on a team for sure to iron out a rotation. But Clevenger's upside was there. This is a guy who, when they had traded for him in 2020, the people who had better ERAs than him over the past few seasons are Verlander, Scherzer, Kershaw, and probably one more that I'm forgetting right now. Like there weren't that many. Oh, Jacob deGrom is the other one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of surprising when I tell people that. Like in terms of ERA at the time, he was up there. He was up there. He threw some really good pitches. His velocity was fine at the time, and I just thought that he was that guy who was going to go at the minimum just give up like maybe one run or two. And the Padres really needed that that season because they had a lot of injuries of their own. Their pitching prospects hadn't come up. And then you had Zach Davies and Dinelson Lamet as your top two starters. And, we weren't sure how that would stay, right, going forward. And then they decide, let's keep him. But then, the Tommy John surgery comes in. And this might just be the case of, it's very rare, I think, for people to be able to deal with giant injuries like that so soon after one another. It's not like he was 22, had an ACL, and then at age 33, he got hurt with a big injury again, right? Like, I just think that the proximity to the first one is really what did him in, and it's also pretty damning that the Padres Petco is a little bit more of a pitcher's park. So for him not to do well there, despite all the momentum the team had, it is pretty rough. But I will say, when he's right, I mean, even in the short time in 2020, he is a pretty good pitcher, man. And again, you could do a lot worse than taking a flyer on a guy who was like a fringe all-star when he was healthy, especially for the position the White Sox are in. And especially considering it's not like there's tons of starting pitchers out there. I know everyone likes to bring up Rodon. Rodon's another injury guy. He's great, but he's also another guy who gets injured a lot. So I don't think this is a very deep free agent class in terms of pitching. So I don't really think it's that bad of a move. Although it is unfortunately a sign of how poorly things have gone for the White Sox lately.
Yeah, Sox are traditionally a team that want to try to capture lightning in a bottle instead of bring the thunder. And I'm wondering if maybe from the experience with Johnny Cueto this past season, things worked out with Johnny Cueto. He had a burst of new life, and they decided, you know what, we could try this again, maybe with a younger guy in Clevinger. I do want to get to, in just a moment here, why the Padres let Clevinger maybe walk. San Diego obviously had a high interest in Clevinger, a huge player deal in 2020. I'm going to find out why the Padres let him walk on the door. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On White Sox listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package theft spike nationally? That's why our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your Simply Safe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. Simply Safe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. Arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings. Don't miss your chance to save big this holiday season. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB. There's no safe like Simply Safe. All right. So Javier Reyes, host of Locked On Padres, you, sir, have made me feel a little bit better now about Mike Clevinger, just a little bit. But I guess my question is, if there is potential upside, for him to maybe regain some of that form, why not try to keep him? Why not San Diego try to get him on the cheap?
And that's a really good question. I think that the biggest thing is maybe Hey, it's totally possible that the Padres are just like, let's just change things up. It's totally possible that they're like, let's just bring in someone new. Maybe he'll do better elsewhere, but we personally don't know how to figure this out. And in fairness, the Padres, in fairness to the White Sox, I should say, have had a really poor history of evaluating pitchers. And, yes, they brought in some guys, Ruben Niebla from the Cleveland Guardians. He's got a great track record, and maybe he told the Padres like, yeah, this guy might not have it anymore. You should move on. His velocity has went down from 95.1 miles per hour on his fastball to 93.6 to be exact, to consult my side computer over here. And I think that with the Pods, though, you still wonder. This is a team that gave up essentially all of its pitching prospects. They do not really have anyone coming up as of right now. Who the heck knows? Someone might sprout up in 6 months. But as of right now, they don't have a lot of reinforcements there. You got Snell, you got Darvish, you got Musgrove, and Nick Martinez. They aren't necessarily a team that is content with their current pitching situation. So I'm a little bit curious to see. Maybe it was just not the price that they wanted, and they figured let's just move on, right? And that we could get someone like Jose Quintana. We'll take a flyer on Corey Kluber, who is a former Padre in a very, very long time ago, back when he was a know-nothing prospect, right? Maybe that's what they would rather do instead of Clevinger again. And I'm all for that. I trust the team when it comes to ironing out the rest of the rotation. Every single time I've been nervous about it, they've been able to, do well enough. But I will say that I think that it's a little damning that they decided, you know what, we're sick of this guy. Every single time they needed him to just do a little bit, he did not come through, and he got worse as the season went on. So that is the thing that I watch out for if White Sox is got worse as time went along. Things can change. Maybe he's having a rehab year, right? Like he just was going to be bad this year no matter what. But with the Padres, I mean, the lasting image is him not even getting a single out in the playoffs, and it was just absolutely maddening. And for me, more than that, I've talked about on my show about the person Mike Clevinger, who is a guy that I'm not here to start lambasting people for politics or what have you, but you had the COVID-19 situation in 2020, which I thought was very wrong. I did not like that they had Carlos Carrasco on the team who had some heart stuff, and you're going out to not even get food, not even heck going to the bank, it's to like a club. Like that's what you were willing to break protocol rules for. Bottom line is those were the rules, and I do not like that you were willing to disregard those, right? Because you wanted to go out on the town, which don't get me wrong, we all want to do that, but it's not as much COVID as the breaking of the rules thing. And second was that after Tatis was suspended for his PED thing, which all of my friends who love to roast the Padres love to remind me of every 5 minutes, that he had some really choice words, kind of like really aggressive by his standards and by player standards of calling him out. I understood it from Musgrove, I understood it from Manny, but from Clevinger, it always rubbed me a little bit the wrong way that you're the guy who did this protocol breaching thing. I understand if you're upset with him, and he very well might be right. And I bet a lot of players in the locker room also felt the same way. But there's something about Clevinger, almost like a lack of self-awareness in him calling out Tatis for that, while you were the dude who not so long ago did what you did out in Cleveland, right? And that might have been part of the reason they traded him. So that always rubbed me the wrong way. Hopefully he's over that. He's still a person who, I don't think he's like a bad, evil person or anything like that, but it's something to keep in the back of the mind. And I think that that's part of why maybe Padres fans especially are like, yeah, all right, like good riddance.
Okay, well now I'm back on a ledge. So, no, but you hit a lot of the the questions that I was going to ask, because I think the Sox are trying to create a new culture here. We've got a brand new manager. Obviously, Jose Abreu is gone. Our team leader, our captain, so to speak. Almost a whole new coaching staff. They seem to be going in a different direction without really admitting it. And I really believe chemistry matters. We've seen this with other teams that have stacked rosters and they don't get anywhere. And I think there's something about unity, culture, and, just reading some articles. And again, you hit on it like, hey, he made some bad choices. It was very telling of what happened in early August 2020. And then 3 weeks later, he gets dealt with 2 years remaining on his contract to San Diego. So interesting. Do you think he's a good teammate? Do you think he will fit in, assimilate to what's going on in Chicago?
It's totally possible. I mean, again, it's a shame because also the calling out of Tatis in a vacuum was deserved. You know what I mean? What Tatis got in trouble for, like, totally reasonable. They trade for Juan Soto. We're excited. We're on a roll. And you're getting popped for PEDs. It's just like, what are you doing, man? Like, ask a team, like, ask someone. But it was just the way he said it. I don't have the quote that Clevinger mentioned in front of me, but I'm okay with Manny. I'm okay with Musgrove. Heck, I'm okay with Hassan Kim said something, right? But there was something about Clevinger that rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's a new team, new clubhouse. We've seen guys bounce back before in all matters of sports. Everybody loves using the second chance term all the time, even when it's not necessarily deserved. But with the White Sox, it's still a good team that has a lot of talent. And Chicago as a fan base can be very supportive if he, comes and operates well. And Yasmani Grandal is a former Padres prospect as well, and he theoretically should be one of the top catchers in the league. I don't know what the hell happened to him. This year.
Injuries. I mean, knee injuries to a 30-plus-year-old catcher, repeatedly knee injuries, not good. Not a good combination.
Good. Yeah. Not good. All right. Well, I mean, and maybe, working with Grandal, working with some new catchers, right? The Padres have had not the best of luck with catchers lately. Maybe you work with a different staff. Anything can happen, man. I mean, Martin Perez, if you want to comp, he was kind of a little bit of a mess, and then he goes to the Rangers and he blows up, and now he's one of the guys that is one of the more interesting free agents, although I think he re-upped with the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken. But I just think that sometimes we maybe talk a little bit too much and complain a little bit too much about moves that probably in the end don't matter too much. It's not like they're signing this guy to a 4-year deal for $60 million. It's 1 year. It's $12 million. If he stinks, you get rid of him at the end of the year. If he's good, maybe you flip him at the deadline for an interesting prospect that you can package for just have an asset, right? So I don't hate it, and the White Sox definitely need some pitching enforcements because the Giolito decline, right? I know that's been really rough.
There's a lot of question marks. Lance Lynn's not getting any, younger. He's had some injuries this past season. Michael Kopech rehabbing from knee injury. So I think that was another thing that, some eyebrows were raised when this Clevinger deal went down is he's a question mark added to a starting staff of a bunch of question marks. So, how is that going to play out? And again, it was the first move really of the offseason. But you're right with the question of character. One of the biggest examples in Sox history is AJ Pierzynski. He was regarded as, a clubhouse cancer. Nobody wants to be this guy's teammate. He will ruin the dugout for you. And he comes over and it just meshed. It just worked. And he's a beloved White Sox. And he won the, obviously World Series with us, stuck around for a while. And anything could happen. Like you said, there's some interesting history, Javier, with Padres and White Sox. I want to get in this next segment a little bit, still Sox fans, clench fists over Manny Machado and the James Shields Tatis Jr. But I also want to get your take on why San Diego wasn't maybe a good fit for Jose Abreu. All right, we're going to do that more in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and I'm sure you do, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay. Jose Abreu is gone. This is going to be difficult for Sox fans for a long time. On social media today, on Twitter especially, it was rough. And seeing him in the Houston Astros jersey at the press conference and the things he said, slicing and dicing all of that, trying to read into what does he mean? Is that a dig at, Jerry Reinsdorf at the White Sox organization? But San Diego was a team, Javier, that, Abreu and the Padres were connected for a while there. There were a lot of articles coming out. It made sense. It just made sense for the needs that the Padres, were looking for. Did the Padres, to your knowledge, offer him a deal? How come it didn't go right in your mind?
I think that, and from what I understand, is that it was some like 3 years, 60 million type of thing.
Yeah.
I think the Padres, I think that they have money to spend, but I don't think, and in fairness to them, they are spending already a good amount of money. This is not your Cleveland. This is not, your Milwaukee, right? Like they are spending a decent amount of money right now, and they might be saying, you know what, we don't need stars though, and I think that that's the biggest thing for me with Jose Abreu is that. I know it, don't get me wrong, I love having stars, but not everybody has to be the Dodgers. In fact, they proved you don't have to be the Dodgers. Everybody watched the playoffs this year. Oh, man. Oh, that was lovely. But my thing with the Pods is I think that they should be taking a lot of these low-cost options. I've been very huge into someone like Michael Conforto. And not to mention, the Padres have some guys who could potentially move over to first if they don't re-sign or sign a first baseman. Say they didn't bring back Abreu, okay. Say they don't bring Josh Bell back to the team, right? Then you can move Jake Cronenworth over to first base. You could have Hassan Kim be permanently shortstop. You have that Fernando Tatis Jr. guy. He's pretty good. He could play shortstop. Or he goes to the outfield and then Kim goes to the bench and they sign Xander Bogaerts, right? Like there's still so many other interesting dominoes to fall that I don't think that them missing out on Jose Abreu is the be all and end all. It's cool, but as people have noted, he is a little bit older, and it's a little bit scary. He doesn't hit fastballs the same way that he used to. He didn't show nearly as much power as he's shown in those glory days, the big fun year. What was his rookie year when he hit 39 home runs or whatever?
Yeah, rookie of the year in 2014, MVP in that 2020 year. He has been the gold standard, for White Sox offense, but his power numbers did fall off, and I was surprised at that 3-year deal. The Sox were not going to pay that, and I don't think they should have paid 3 years, $60 million for his services.
Yeah, and that's a decent chunk of change, 20 million a year. So the Padres might be thinking, you know what? I'd rather we move Cronenworth if we don't get blank, blank, or blank, whatever targets that they may have on their whiteboard right now. If we don't do that, we have someone who could play first. And I bet you Josh Bell, if they want to do that, he's not going to go for nearly as much as Jose Abreu did. I'd be very shocked if he did. And you might talk yourself into that and say, oh, well, Josh Bell, he's been pretty good before. And yeah, the defense is lacking, but we don't complain about Alonso and some of these other first basemen the same way when they don't have their good defensive value. So we'd rather do that for 2 years, 28. I don't know what the heck, right? Maybe that's what's the Padre camp way of thinking. And if that's the case, then I'm all for it because the Padres have stars already. They have Tatis, they have Soto, they have Manny. You have 3 potential MVPs, one of which should have won the MVP, in your lineup. So this is not the Padres of old. You do not have to go all out for the superstars because you already have 3 of them. Not to mention Yu Darvish is rad, and you still got Blake Snell, and you got all these guys. You got Musgrove, who I think is a borderline star as well. And I think most people would agree. So I think that's what it is. I think they're just like, you know what? A little bit too pricey for us, and there's some other guys out there, right? If they decide to do the Xander Bogaerts rumor, that's like a big-time player who's been good back since when Jose Abreu first came onto the scene. Like he's been in the league and been dominant as a bat. Defense leaves a little bit to be questioned, desired sometimes, but he's been great for a long time too. So maybe that's what they figured. I don't know. It's exciting. I will say it's exciting knowing that the Padres, look, Preller doesn't know how to stop. You know what I mean? If you have a player who is good, he is interested. All right. In fact, if you even have a player that is someone who can be signed or traded for, AJ Preller has showed that he's very interested, and it just wouldn't shock me any direction that they go in.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring you on just to hear you say that and hear what it's like to have that as a fan, because we don't really know in the White Sox fan base. We just don't know. I mean, we lost out on Manny Machado because really Jerry Reinsdorf wanted to do things his way, not Manny Machado's way in his camp. He wanted to sweeten it his own way. Laughable stuff, trying to bring in Yonder Alonso and John Jay to entice Manny Machado. the James Shields Tatis Jr. thing still just aggravates all Sox fans. How we do look at your organization as like, wow. I mean, like they're in on everybody. Like at the deadline with Soto, it's unbelievable. How do the fans feel about the organization? Do they feel the money is being spent the right way? And is it just really too difficult to leapfrog the Dodgers in terms of divisional, although you guys did it in the playoffs?
I think that fans are just so excited. I think it really needs to be stressed that, I mean, ever since I started hosting the podcast, it's been galore, right? And even when Jay Preller first got there, and while it didn't work out with the trade for Will Myers that gave up a little guy named Trey Turner, right? The trade for Melvin Upton, the trade for Craig Kimbrell and Matt Kemp and Justin Upton, like all these guys, it didn't work out. But what's remarkable is that the Padres and new ownership, the Seidlers deserve a lot of credit too. It's a new face. This wasn't just a 1 year thing. They keep doing this, and they stressed even as the season ended that this isn't that they're going to continue to spend. I'm not saying that they have to go up to the New York Mets or anything like that, but it's just nice to know that we are not only going to singularly let money dictate whether or not we're going to be competitive. We're going to look at the landscape and we're going to decide if we think a player is worth it. Padres fans were complaining last year. They didn't get Nick Castellanos. Well, guess what? You got Juan Soto. You don't know. It's nice to know that if the Padres did go out this offseason and all they did was sign, I don't know, like like Kevin Kiermaier. That's a little bit mean, but if they sign like an okay player and that was it, it's nice to know that that doesn't mean that they're done, right? Because we just saw that. We just saw they didn't sign Castellanos or Schwarber, and then they got Soto later. So it just shows you that they're always ready to keep investing in their team. They're not going to be a Brewers and trade one of their best assets despite leading the division. They're not going to do that. They're going to keep going for it, even when they have Thanos in their division, right? They're still going for it, and I think that that's what they love. They love, even in my opinion, even if it isn't always resulting in a lot of wins, it's at least giving you something to watch all year. It's a long ass season, right?
Yeah.
So that's just great, and I feel bad for all these teams that ownership is just kind of using this excuse of money, and they've been doing this for years, and it's like, oh well, we're the Oakland A's. We don't have a high attendance. It's like, well, yeah, that's because for the past 400 years, you've been showing that you get rid of all of your guys. So eventually people are like, hey, I got an idea. Let's go watch football, or let's go watch the new season of Mythic Quest on Apple TV or Ted Lasso. Like, people would rather dedicate their time elsewhere because you aren't dedicating your time to them. And as a result, I think that that's what has happened to a lot of teams. And the Padres are like, I got an idea. We're the only pro team in town here. Let's own it. Let's go for it. Let's have Emma Stone come to games, right? Like, that's kind of, it's so fun, right? Like, it's so fun to see this giant shift. And I wish that more teams in baseball would do the same. I mean, Chicago is famously not a small market. So I feel bad that the White Sox have all this talent and they're like, I don't know. Maybe we'll sign like Hillary Anderson and call it a day.
Well, it's refreshing to hear that, and it's you know, it's music to all Sox fans' ears, and just to tie it all up with Abreu, I'm sure they offered him something. I don't know when. I mean, he said that Sox made an offer. Who knows when it was exactly during this whole process? But when he signed his extension in 2019 for 3 years, I think he truly felt that Reinsdorf was going to go all in and make a serious commitment, go after premium players, pay premium money, brought in, forced Tony La Russa down our throats. And he's got his guy now in the managerial spot. Oh, of course, the front office is going to do everything they can to get me some help to win a title. And that it didn't happen. And good for him for saying, you know what, I want to win. And Houston's going to do that. They're showing that for sure. So yeah, the Sox unfortunately operate like a small market team. They cry poor. And, you know, it's just interesting to hear your take. And I really appreciate you coming on, Javier Reyes, and giving us a little bit of hope on Clevinger. And, you know, anything can happen, but I wanted to get your perspective.
Absolutely, man. I mean, he has a bunch of plus pitches, and just Give him some time. Maybe the off season they can really work with him and bring him back to what he was before the injuries. Not a guarantee. And by the way, even if it's not what he was before, if you can get like half of that, if you get 50% of that, guys, that's a value, especially on a 1 year contract. And a lot of teams will eat that up if the White Sox aren't being competitive. They would love to trade for that. And guess what? Maybe you get a little bit of a reverse James Shields. I don't know. Maybe you trade Mike Clevinger for some 16-year-old named John Flamesworth or whatever the heck, and then he comes up and he's the starting, first baseman for years.
We're due for one of those. Yeah, I mean, it's the AL Central. I said it last year. It's a weak division, and look what happened. We got steamrolled, but I still think that Sox have a ton of talent. They can get back and they could recapture the AL Central. And I appreciate the insight. We'll see with Clevinger, and you never know what could happen between the Sox and the Padres during these winter meetings during this offseason. You never know. We might connect again. But Javier, where can everybody find your work?
Yeah, everybody could find me on Twitter at Javapeno. In my opinion, one of the best names on the Locked On MLB network. Javapeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres for the show's Twitter account. Locked On Padres everywhere. On YouTube as well. Locked On Padres is the YouTube thing. Pretty easy to find all that. And everybody go see Glass Onion, by the way. Movies are back. That's my last take of this here show, Nick. Incredible stuff. Unlike sometimes the White Sox, right? Who maybe don't show that they are not giving the people what they want. Ryan Johnson gave people what they want. So everybody go check that out.
Absolutely, because there's not going to be a lot of action from the White Sox. So go watch movies this offseason. I love it. Javier, thank you so much for joining us, buddy.
For sure, man. Glad we